I'm David Lombardo, and you're listening to WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're highlighting a package of bills designed to address some of the risks of life-threatening allergies. And joining us in the studio is Toni Taylor, Executive Director of Allergy Advocates New York. Thanks for visiting us in the studio, Toni.
Thank you for having me.
And we're joined remotely by Amy Weber, a mom of a food allergic child and advocate. Thanks for making the time, Amy.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Well, let's start with menu labeling and legislation that requires food service establishments to proactively and clearly highlight the presence of some of the major food allergens in their menu items. Why a requirement like that as opposed to, say, just making that information available and possibly even more to patrons who ask?
Well, we know from experience that more than 50% of severe and potentially fatal reactions happen from exposures in restaurants. And that's about 2 million New Yorkers have food allergies, and that's 1 in 13 kids. It affects a wide group of New York. And this has been really common in Europe. They label all of their menus. They just passed this in California. This is a great opportunity for New York to be really at the forefront for the entire country. When we have labels on menus, as a mom of a kid who has a severe life-threatening food allergy, she's needed 3 EpiPens from restaurant exposures. And that means that she had a potentially fatal exposure to her food allergen, which is eggs. So having the labels on the menus, or however they want to do it, the bill allows for them to have a QR code, to have a binder, to have it physically on the menu, means that the restaurant has needed to fully know what ingredients, and the entire restaurant staff knows. I'm not relying on a waiter to go back to a kitchen who talks to a chef. And all in all, it means that we avoid more costly trips to ERs, more costly doctor's appointments, more costly purchases of EpiPens I've used. And so it goes to affordability and not just safety.
And this bill deals with so-called major food allergens. So what are we talking about, and why define it at all like that? Why not just give the entire ingredient list to the patrons potentially?
Well, maybe in the future, but right now, we've established the 9 major allergens, which is what we used in the FASTER Act. So when you turn over a box of crackers that you've purchased, it'll give all the ingredients, but at the bottom it says allergens. And that really, because most allergies really fall within those 9, you can be allergic to anything, but the majority of allergens are those 9.
And basically the top 9 allergens are those that are recognized by the FDA. So they are already kind of baked into, federal law in regard to what needs to be labeled for. And so what menu labeling requires is that in all episodes of digital or print menus, that restaurants they only need to label for the top 9. They don't have to list their entire ingredient list. Thus, it's not that hard for the restaurant industry to accommodate this. And this bill was also initiated in California and passed in California. And restaurants there have made it very clear that it's not that hard, that it is not an undue burden on restaurants. As we discovered, this is also an add-on to the bill packaged food labeling that we just passed with the help, sponsorship, and leadership of member Lunsford on packaged food. And basically that is, if we can get packaged food manufacturers in the state to label for top 9 only, restaurants can do the same.
And those allergens, for listeners who are curious, are milk, eggs, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, wheat, peanuts, sesame, and soybeans. So in terms of the awareness that you're looking to promote, is this for more of the allergens that people might not expect to be in a dish, or is this for things as simple as, hey, if I'm ordering a cheeseburger, I need a reminder that the cheese has dairy in it? I mean, how do you think about the role of this type of disclosure?
My daughter's going to react to egg in any form, from
Sure.
a scrambled egg to a trace amount in mayonnaise that's used in a salad. So what this menu label does is, clearly some things are more evident than others. But this really allows us to know, and for the restaurant to know, and all of the wait staff to know exactly anything that wouldn't be apparent, in addition to everything that's, visible to the naked eye.
And do you want the wait staff to be able to recall this stuff from memory, for example, or just be able to refer to maybe somewhere on the menu or point to a binder, for example?
Whatever works for their restaurant to answer the question. So in Europe, you get a menu often, and it'll have a little footnote. 3 is egg and 1 is milk, and you can just know that if you see your number there, there's usually kind of a key or a code that is present in the dish. In other cases, you use your phone to scan a QR code, and it takes you to a long list of all the items on the menu and a little checkbox if it has your allergen. In some cases, it's a binder. They bring you an entire binder, loose leaf binder, and you flip through it and you find your whatever dish you're interested in ordering. And in even better cases, sometimes you put in, I would like to see a menu that does not have milk or egg, and it'll only give you those options that don't have those too. So it's really whatever works for the restaurant. I'll take the information any way I can get it in order to protect my child.
And this would require the actual labeling on the restaurant because, as you know, there's oftentimes high turnover in wait staff in restaurants. So this would take the pressure off of front of house staff to know everything that's happening in the kitchen. And then it puts the onus on the restaurant owner and the guest to trust each other, that the guest will know, okay, the restaurant owner is labeling appropriately for only the top 9. I'm not asking him for everything. I'm just asking them for the top 9. And that needs to be visibly apparent. And to Amy's point, allergy families will take the information any way they can. But if wait staff can be supported by having labeling very prominent in the menu for only the top 9 allergens, that would be a service to everyone, including the restaurants, because 25% of the dining public is food allergic, and the rest of us might have undiagnosed allergies that we're not even aware of. So if restaurants, that 25% of the dining public would be more than happy to go out to dinner and to dine and to run up nice healthy tabs in the restaurant industry if the restaurant industry would just make it easy for them to do that.
So non-compliance, according to the bill language, if this is adopted into law, comes with a civil penalty not to exceed $125 for each violation. How do you envision this being enforced? Do you anticipate that state or local regulators are going to be checking in on restaurants? Do you want active citizenry to be reporting these types of violations? How do you envision these rules being followed by restaurants, or how do you envision them also becoming aware of something like this?
Enforcement could look like just added to the local town or county Department of Health restaurant checking, whatever that process is for the town and the county, that this would just be one more thing added to that checklist.
Like, so can I see the menu and this is what I'm looking for on it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, just part of their annual or whatever that process is for restaurants in regard to their annual checks with the local Department of Health. That would be one way. Another way would be for the dining public to also go forth and just make sure, can we see your menu? Can we understand? Can we see if you've actually labeled appropriately? Because if you haven't, we might have to pass and go elsewhere.
Well, I want to turn then, with the time we have left, to another bill that has to do with insurance coverage for what's known as early egg and peanut allergen introduction of dietary supplements for infants. This would be at no cost. First of all, what are we talking about with this type of, what do I call it, procedure or medical program? And why should this be something that insurers are covering at no cost?
That would be a bill that we're calling early introduction, and towards the end of eliminating and avoiding the development of peanut and egg allergy. And this is like a 10 to 15-year-old research that has been done that proves that the early introduction of the well baby stage, somewhere in that 4 to 10 month time frame, that if babies are introduced in a clinical way, not just going out and having mom, their family wing it, but just have the pediatrician in a very controlled dosage way introduce peanut and egg proteins, that reduces the development of lifelong allergies to those 2 allergens by like 80%. So and that is a one-time cost of less than $100. If that can avoid those allergies, that saves Medicare, the insurance companies, and families lots. The average food allergic family they're spending $6,000 to $8,000 a year maintaining multiple doses of epinephrine, the occasional round of anaphylaxis. Nobody wants that happening in their restaurant or anywhere for that matter. And then this would allow them to avoid that. And insurers are going to have to pay for that anyway. Medicare would be paying for that anyway. If Medicare and insurers just paid for that less than $100 one time back in the early baby stage, we can kind of do the back of the envelope calculation on what that would be. We're talking savings of millions. And it would also expand access because at no cost because some folks, they've got plenty of resources to go forth and go pay for these supplements because they're not expensive at all. But other families would struggle. And this is already covered by WIC and SNAP. So this would also bring lower income folks in New York State, make sure that the state can support that, what WIC and SNAP already supports.
If it is the case that this is an example of an ounce of prevention being able to avoid, the pound of cure, wouldn't insurers proactively make this type of thing available with low to no barriers?
Well, interesting you say that because in Delaware, they did exactly that. They did the calculation, like it was not hard to do the calculation. So currently, the current status of this bill is that it is stuck in insurance committees. We're not sure why. What we are calling for, our call to action to insurance committees, is to just get it to the floor because for the math you just laid out, there's no reason. It saves money. So, we're not sure why. We've been asking insurance and finance committee staff members to kind of suss out, give us a heads up. What's the issue here? We're not hearing from them. So we would encourage them to just bring this bill to move it through all the committees, put it on the floor, both chamber floors. We're running out of time, and I think both chambers know that.
And just to take a step back, what happened when allergies kind of ballooned and we suddenly saw tons of kids who were allergic with severe food allergies, so much more than there had been in the past. Doctors said, don't feed your kid any peanuts or any tree nuts in their first year. We did strict avoidance. And then we saw allergies get even worse. And so now it's the exact opposite. We know that if they are exposed between 4 and 10 months, as Toni said, this is in your pediatrician's office. It's just little powders. It comes in a little set, and it's not a big procedure. It's just like, I would call it almost like a supplement, and really, really prevents so many of these kids from having these lifelong, potentially fatal food allergies. And part of the issue with affordability is that it's a deductible issue. So, you might have insurance and your insurance might cover it, but not at no cost. And if you have a high deductible plan and you have $1,000 deductible and it costs $600, that might be out of your family's budget. And so it's an affordability issue.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation. We've been speaking with Toni Taylor, Executive Director of Allergy Advocates New York. Thank you for visiting us in the studio, Toni.
Thank you.
And we've also been hearing from Advocate Amy Weber. Thank you for joining us remotely, Amy.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to today's edition of the Capitol Press Room. For an insider take on what's happening in state government, check out our Dispatches from Planet Albany show, available wherever you get podcasts or at capitolpressroom.org.
Join us again for Capitol Press Room, a production of WCNY Connected, Syracuse.